I wasn't supposed to be at that wedding. Actually, scratch that, I wasn't even supposed to exist in that situation. But somehow, 3 days after my landlord casually knocked on my door to remind me rent was due, I found myself standing in front of a mirror, adjusting a suit that wasn't mine, preparing to pretend I was someone's boyfriend, that someone being his son, Leo. And yeah, it already sounds like a bad idea. It was a bad idea, but at the time it didn't feel like one. Started on a random Tuesday evening. I had just gotten back from work, mentally drained, already calculating how much instant noodles I'd need to survive the week. Rent had gone up again, which was insane considering the place barely deserved the word apartment, more like a slightly upgraded storage unit. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when there was a knock on my door. Not unusual. My landlord had this habit of showing up unannounced, always with that polite but not really smile. I opened the door expecting the usual. Instead, I got Leo. I'd seen him before, obviously. You don't live in a place for over a year without noticing your landlord's ridiculously good-looking son showing up occasionally. Tall, messy dark hair, that effortless confidence that made it seem like he didn't even try. We'd exchanged maybe 5 words total before that night. "Hey," he said. Leaning casually against the doorframe like this was completely normal. "You're Cooper, right?" There was something about the way he said my name, like he already knew it, like he'd been thinking about it. "Yeah," I replied, a bit slower than I'd like to admit. "And you're Leo." He smiled at that. Not a big one, just enough to make my stomach do something weird. Good. That saves me some awkward introductions. I frowned slightly. Okay." He glanced down the hallway, then back at me, lowering his voice a little. "Can I come in for a second? I promise this won't take long." That should have been my first red flag. But I stepped aside anyway. He walked in like he'd been there before, taking a quick look around, not in a judgmental way, just observant. Then he turned to face me, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to figure out how to start. "So," he said, "this is going to sound weird." "Great." I crossed my arms. "That's always a good sign." He let out a short laugh. "Yeah, I deserve that. Just hear me out, okay?" I nodded, already curious despite myself. Leo took a breath, then said, "I need a date for a wedding." I blinked. "Okay. And I want that date to be you." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. "You're serious?" I said flatly. "Very." There was a pause. A long one. I actually looked behind me for a second, like maybe there was someone else in the room he could possibly be talking to. "No," I said finally, shaking my head. "No, there's no way. We barely know each other." "I know," he said quickly. "That's kind of the point. That makes less sense." He sighed, stepping a little closer, his voice dropping just enough to feel personal. "My ex is going to be there." Okay. Now we were getting somewhere. "And?" I asked. "And," he continued, "he thinks I'm still hung up on him, which I'm not. But if I show up alone, he's going to assume I am." I raised an eyebrow. "So your solution is to bring a random guy from your dad's building?" "When you say it like that, it sounds worse than it is." "It is worse than it is." He smiled again, but this time there was something a little more nervous underneath it. "I didn't pick you randomly." That made me pause. No, his eyes met mine steady. "I've noticed you. You seem real. Not fake, not dramatic. I need someone who can just be normal with me for a few hours." I didn't know what to say to that, because part of me wanted to laugh it off. Tell him to find someone else. Someone he actually knew. Someone who wasn't currently calculating whether he could afford groceries and electricity this month. But another part of me, quieter, more dangerous, was curious. "Why me?" I asked again, softer this time. Leo hesitated for a second. Then he said, "Because I think you'd be good at pretending." Something about that hit a little too close. I let out a slow breath, running a hand over the back of my neck. "And what exactly does this pretending involve?" He shrugged lightly. "Just showing up together, acting like we're dating. Nothing crazy." "Nothing crazy," I repeated. "Yeah." I narrowed my eyes. You realize weddings involve a lot of questions, right? People talking, watching, judging. I'll handle that, he cut in. You just have to stick by me. Stick by him. Simple. Too simple. And after that? I asked. After that, we go back to being strangers. There it was. Clean. Easy. No strings. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But instead, I heard myself ask, when is it? Leo's expression shifted instantly relief, maybe even a hint of excitement. Saturday. Of course it is, I muttered. He stepped closer again, just a little, like he didn't want to push but couldn't help it. So, is that a yes? I looked at him, really looked this time, at the way he was trying to act confident but couldn't completely hide the tension in his shoulders. At the way his eyes searched mine like this actually mattered to him more than he was letting on. And for some reason, that's what did it. Fine, I said. His whole face lit up. Seriously? Yeah, I sighed. But if this turns into something insane, I'm blaming you. He laughed. That easy, genuine kind that made everything feel lighter for a second. Deal. Then he extended his hand like we were making some kind of official agreement. I stared at it for a moment before shaking it. His grip was warm, firm, lingering just a second longer than necessary. Thanks, Cooper, he said quietly. And for the first time since he walked in, something about this didn't feel like a random favor anymore. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't fully understand yet. And honestly, that should have scared me more than it did. Looking back, I should have asked more questions, like what kind of ex we were dealing with, or how convincing I was expected to be, or why the hell Leo seemed so invested in this whole thing. Instead, I said yes. And suddenly I had 3 days to prepare to be someone's boyfriend. A fake one, supposedly. The next evening, there was another knock on my door. This time, I already knew who it was. I opened it, and Leo was standing there again, except now he was holding a garment bag in one hand and 2 coffee cups in the other. Peace offering, he said, lifting the coffees slightly. I glanced at them. You're bribing me already? Absolutely. I need you on my side. I stepped aside, letting him in. That implies I'm not. He walked in with that same easy confidence, but I noticed something new this time. He seemed focused. Like this wasn't just some casual favor anymore. I got you something, he said, holding up the garment bag. I sighed. I was afraid of that. Relax, he smirked. It's just a suit. You can't show up looking like you just survived finals week. I did just survive finals week, I muttered. Exactly my point. He set the coffee down on the counter and handed me the bag. I hesitated for a second before taking it, feeling the unexpected weight of it. You didn't have to do this, I said. I know, he replied. I wanted to. That again. That tone. Like there was more behind it than just a wedding. I unzipped the bag slightly, catching a glimpse of a dark, clean-cut suit that definitely cost more than anything I owned. Leo, I said slowly, this is too much. It's really not. It is for me. He stepped closer, just enough to lower his voice. Then think of it as part of the deal. I looked up at him. What deal? You help me out. I make sure you don't regret it. There was something in his eyes when he said that, something steady, intentional. And yeah, my brain definitely caught that phrasing. Sounds vague, I said. Sounds fair, he corrected. I exhaled, shaking my head slightly. You're unbelievable. And yet, he smiled, you still said yes. Touché. We ended up sitting on opposite sides of my small kitchen table, going over what he called the basics, which apparently meant building an entire fake relationship from scratch. How long have we been dating? I asked, sipping my coffee. 3 months, he answered immediately. That was fast. I had time to think about it. Of course he did. Where did we meet? He paused for half a second. Coffee shop. I narrowed my eyes. Creative. It works, he shrugged. Simple, believable. Okay. I nodded slowly. And what do we do together? Leo leaned back in his chair, studying me for a moment. Honestly, he said, Probably what we're doing right now. And what's that? Hanging out, talking, not forcing anything. There it was again. That word real. I set my cup down. You keep saying that. Saying what? That you want this to feel real. Because I do. I held his gaze. Why? For a second, he didn't answer. Then he leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. Because if it looks fake, he said quietly, he'll know. The way he said yeah. This ex clearly wasn't just some random guy. Okay, I said after a moment. So we act like a normal couple. Exactly. And what does that look like to you? Leo smiled, but this time it was different, smaller, almost thoughtful. Guess we'll have to figure that out. That's when things started getting weird. Not bad weird, just new. Because suddenly we were practicing. First, it was small things, like how close we stood next to each other. Too far and it looked distant. Too close and it felt intense. Here, Leo said at one point, stepping in front of me. Just stand still. That sounds threatening. Relax. Before I could react, he gently placed his hands on my waist, adjusting my position like it was the most natural thing in the world. Except it wasn't. Not for me. Because now he was right there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, smell whatever subtle cologne he was wearing. See, he said softly, this is normal. My brain completely disagreed. Normal for who? I asked, my voice coming out a little tighter than I intended. He didn't move his hands. Couples, he said simply. There was a pause, a long one, and for some reason, neither of us stepped back right away. It was stupid. It was practice. That's all it was. So why did it feel like something else? Leo's fingers shifted slightly against my side, not gripping. Just there. Too much? He asked quietly. I should have said yes. Instead, I shook my head. No. Another pause. Then slowly he let go. Good, he said, stepping back like nothing happened. But something had happened. I just didn't know what to call it yet. By the end of the night, we had a full story. 3 months. Met at a coffee shop. Kept things low-key. Taking it slow. That part was his idea. Why slow? I asked. Because it explains why no one's heard about you yet, he said. And also, he hesitated just slightly. It gives us an excuse. For what? For figuring things out as we go. I frowned. You mean improvising? Yeah, he said. That. But something about the way he said it didn't sound like he was just talking about the wedding anymore. When he finally stood up to leave, the room felt quieter. Like something had shifted without me noticing. Saturday, he reminded me at the door. Saturday, I nodded. He lingered for a second, like he wanted to say something else. Then he just smiled. Try the suit on, he added. I need you looking good. I rolled my eyes. No pressure. None at all, he smirked. And then he was gone. I closed the door and leaned back against it, exhaling slowly. This was ridiculous. I had just agreed to pretend to be someone's boyfriend at a wedding full of strangers. And somehow, the part that stuck with me the most was the way his hands felt on my waist. Yeah. That was definitely a problem. The morning of the wedding, I almost backed out. Not in a dramatic way. No last-minute panic attack or anything like that. It was quieter, more subtle, like standing in front of the mirror, already dressed, and realizing this isn't just a joke anymore. The suit fit perfectly. Of course it did. Leo had guessed my size like he'd done this before, like he paid attention to things most people wouldn't. That thought alone made my chest feel weird. I adjusted the collar for the 3rd time, staring at my reflection. You're overthinking it, I muttered to myself, which was ironic because I absolutely was. A fake boyfriend. A wedding. His ex. Yeah. Nothing to overthink there. There was a knock on my door. Right on time. I grabbed my jacket, hesitated for half a second, then opened it. Leo. And for a moment I just stared. I'd seen him before, obviously, but this was different. Suit. Clean, sharp, fitted like it was made for him. His hair actually styled for once instead of that usual messy look. And somehow, he still managed to look effortless. Like he didn't even try. "Damn," he said, eyes flicking over me. "You clean up really well." I scoffed, trying to ignore the way that immediately got to me. "It's the suit, not me." "Pretty sure it's both." There was that look again. Too direct. Too intentional. I grabbed my keys just to have something to do. "So, we doing this?" Leo smiled slightly. "We're doing this." The drive was quieter than I expected. Not awkward, just calm. Music playing low in the background, neither of us forcing conversation. It felt weirdly natural, like we'd done this 100 times before, which didn't help, because every time I started to forget this was fake, I'd remember why we were going. His ex. I glanced over at him once while he was driving, his focus on the road, jaw slightly tense. "Hey," I said. "Yeah. You good?" He nodded immediately. "Yeah. Just ready to get this over with. Right?" A pause. Then, before I could stop myself, I added, "You don't have to prove anything, you know?" Leo's grip on the steering wheel tightened just a little. "I know," he said, "but I want to." That shut me up. The venue was exactly what you'd expect. Too nice. Too expensive. Too many people who looked like they belonged there. I definitely didn't. "Relax," Leo murmured as we walked toward the entrance. "You look like you're about to walk into an exam." "Feels like one," I muttered. He chuckled softly. "You'll be fine." Easy for him to say. We got to the entrance, and that's when he stopped. "Hey," he said, turning to face me. I looked at him. "What?" He hesitated for a second, then stepped closer. "From here on," he said quietly, "we're on." Before I could respond, his hand slid into mine, and just like that, everything changed. It wasn't like when we practiced. That had been controlled, expected. This was different. His fingers laced with mine naturally, like they belonged there, like this wasn't new. And the worst part? My body reacted like it wasn't new, like it made sense. "You okay?" he asked under his breath. I swallowed. "Yeah." But I didn't pull away. Inside it was chaos. Not loud chaos. Polite chaos. Conversations, laughter, people moving around in groups, all of them dressed perfectly. And then there was us. Together. Leo didn't let go of my hand. Not once. If anything, his grip tightened slightly every time someone approached us. "Leo!" A voice called. We both turned. A guy, probably around our age, walked up with a grin. "You actually showed up." "Wouldn't miss it," Leo replied easily. Then the guy's eyes shifted to me. "And you are?" There it was. First test. I felt Leo's thumb brush lightly against my hand before he answered. "This is Cooper," he said. "My boyfriend." Boyfriend. Hearing him say it out loud did something to me. Something I definitely wasn't prepared for. "Nice to meet you," the guy said, looking between us with obvious curiosity. "You too," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "So how long have you two been together?" 3 months. Coffee shop. Keep it simple. "About 3 months," I said smoothly. Leo glanced at me just for a second. Not surprised. Impressed. "Damn," the guy smirked. "And you're already bringing him to weddings? That's serious." Leo shrugged. "He's worth it." I nearly choked, but I didn't react. Couldn't. Because that was the whole point. Act natural. Act real. The ceremony itself was a blur. I barely paid attention to anything except the fact that Leo's hand stayed on my knee the entire time. Subtle, but constant. And every time his fingers shifted slightly, focus, gone. Afterward, during the reception, things got worse. Or better. I still couldn't decide. Because now there was music, dancing, and way too many opportunities to be close. "You dance?" Leo asked at one point. "Not really." "Good," he smirked. "Neither do I." That's reassuring. But 5 minutes later, we were on the dance floor anyway. Of course we were. His hands found my waist again just like before. Except this time there were people around. eyes, expectations, and yet somehow felt less like pretending. "You're stiff," he murmured. "I'm aware. Relax. Easy for you to say." He leaned in slightly, close enough that I could feel his breath near my ear. "Just follow me." Follow him, right? Because that was a great idea. But I did. And slowly, awkwardly at first, it started to feel easier, natural. His hands guiding me, steady, confident. Like he'd done this before. Like we'd done this before. "You're doing fine," he said quietly. I huffed. "Low standards." He laughed softly, and the sound hit way too close. For a second, everything else faded. The people, the noise, the reason we were even here. It was just... And then it happened. The reason we were here. I didn't even see him approach. But I felt it. The shift in Leo's body. The way he went still for half a second. "Leo." The voice was sharp. Familiar in a way that didn't belong to me. I turned. And yeah, I didn't need an introduction. Because the look on Leo's face said everything. This was him. The ex. And suddenly, this wasn't just pretending anymore. I didn't need to ask who he was. You can just tell. It was in the way Leo's entire body shifted. Subtle but sharp, like something inside him locked into place. And then I looked at the guy standing in front of us. Tall, put together. The kind of confident that felt a little too polished, a little too intentional. His eyes moved from Leo to me, then down to where our bodies were still close, still touching, still convincing. "So it's true," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. Leo's hand tightened slightly on my waist. "Yeah," he replied, calm. Too calm. "It is." The guy's gaze shifted back to him, something unreadable flashing across his face. "Didn't think you'd actually do it." "Do what?" Leo asked, tone flat. "This." He gestured vaguely between us. "Move on so fast." There was a beat of silence. And I realized something important. This wasn't just about showing up with someone new. This was personal. Leo let out a quiet breath. "It's been months, Adrian." "Adrian." "Okay. Name confirmed." Adrian gave a small, humorless smile. "Yeah. Funny how that works." Then his eyes flicked back to me. And this time, they stayed there. "You're Cooper, right?" My stomach tightened. "Yeah," I said. He nodded slowly, like he was studying me, like he was trying to figure something out. "And how'd you two meet?" Second test. Except this one felt different. He wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was checking. I felt Leo's thumb brush against my side again, small, grounding. "Coffee shop." "Simple." "Coffee shop," I said. 3 months ago." Adrian's lips twitched slightly. "Of course." There was something about the way he said it that made it clear. He didn't believe it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Leo shifted slightly beside me. "Is there a point to this?" Adrian looked back at him, that same almost smile still there. "Just catching up." "Doesn't feel like it." Another pause. Then Adrian's expression softened just a little. "You always did move on fast." Leo's jaw tightened. "I didn't move on," he said quietly. "I moved forward." That hit harder than I expected. Even Adrian seemed to feel it. For a second, neither of them said anything. Then Adrian exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "Right? Well, congratulations." He glanced at me one last time. "Take care of him." And then he walked away. The moment he was gone, the air felt different, like something heavy had just lifted. But not completely. Leo didn't move right away. Neither did I. We were still standing there, still close, still. "Hey," I said quietly. He didn't respond. I shifted slightly, enough to catch his attention. "You okay?" Leo blinked, like he was snapping out of something. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Yeah, I'm fine." A pretty obvious one. But I didn't push. Instead, I did something I didn't think about. I tightened my grip on his hand. Just a little. And this time, he didn't just hold back. He held on. We didn't go back to dancing. Instead, we stepped outside. The night air was cooler, quieter. A break from the noise, the expectations, the constant pretending. Except, it didn't feel like pretending anymore. Leo leaned against the railing, running a hand through his hair, messing it up again like he always did when he was thinking. I didn't expect him to show up that early, he said. I leaned next to him. You handled it. Did I? Yeah. He huffed out a small laugh. Didn't feel like it. There was a pause. Then I said, he still cares. Leo didn't look at me. I know. And you? That got his attention. He turned his head slightly, studying me like he wasn't sure how to answer. It's complicated. Usually is. Another pause. Then quietly, I don't miss him. That was honest. I could hear it. But, I asked. He hesitated. But, I hate that he still gets to me. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that part is tough. He glanced at me again, something softer in his expression now. You didn't have to stay back there, you know? With you. Yeah. I shrugged. Kind of my job tonight. He smiled faintly. Right? Fake boyfriend duties. Fake. There it was again. Except now, it didn't land the same way. Something like that, I said. Leo watched me for a second longer than necessary. Then he said, quieter this time. You're really good at it. I let out a breath. You said that already. I know. I meant it. Our eyes held for a second. Too long. Too real. I looked away first. When we went back inside, something had shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but in the small things. The way his hand found mine again faster this time. The way he stood just a little closer. The way conversations felt easier, like we weren't thinking about every move anymore. Like we weren't acting. At one point, someone joked, you two look way too comfortable for 3 months. And Leo just smiled and said, guess we got lucky. And for some reason, that stuck with me. Later, near the end of the night, we were sitting at one of the tables, both of us a little more relaxed. Almost done, I said. Yeah, Leo nodded. You survived. Barely. He smirked. You did more than survive. I rolled my eyes. Don't start. I'm serious. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You made it believable. I held his gaze. That was the goal. Was it? Something about the way he said that. I frowned slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Leo didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at me, like he was trying to decide something. And then, nothing, he said, leaning back again. Just, thanks. I didn't push it, but I felt it. That shift. That question he didn't ask. And when the night finally started winding down, I realized something I wasn't ready to admit yet. I didn't want it to end. Not the wedding. Not the pretending. Not whatever this was turning into. And that was a much bigger problem than I expected. We should have left right after that. That would have been the smart move. Wrap it up, say goodbye, get in the car and go back to being strangers like we agreed. But instead, we stayed. Last drink? Leo asked, already halfway standing. I looked at him. That's how bad decisions start. He smirked. Relax. 1 drink. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. Then I sighed. Fine. 1. Yeah. That was mistake number 1. By the time we actually left, the place had started to empty out. People saying their goodbyes. Music softer now, everything winding down. Leo and I walked out together, his hand brushing against mine before naturally slipping into it again. No hesitation this time. No, we're on reminder. Just automatic. And I didn't question it. Didn't pull away. Didn't even think about it until we were already outside. The night air hit different now. Cooler. Quieter. Realer. For a second, we just stood there, neither of us rushing to move. So, I said finally, you did it. Leo let out a small breath. Yeah. Feel better. He thought about it. Yeah, he admitted. I do. I nodded. Good. Silence. Not awkward. Just full. Like there was something sitting between us. Neither of us quite ready to say it out loud. The drive back was not like before. Before it was calm. Now it was charged. Not in an obvious way. No dramatic tension or anything like that. Just small things. His hand resting on the center console, close enough that our fingers brushed every now and then. The way he'd glance at me for half a second longer than necessary. The way I kept noticing it. Yeah. That kind of charged. When we pulled up in front of my building, neither of us moved right away. Engine off. Silence. There it was again. That moment where something could happen, or nothing could. Thanks, Leo said finally, breaking it. I nodded. Yeah, no problem. For real, he added. You didn't have to do any of this. I know. Another pause. Then I smirked slightly. But I was a great fake boyfriend, right? He let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, he said. You were. Something about the way he said it didn't feel like a joke. I reached for the door handle. And that's when he said it. Cooper. I froze for half a second, then looked back at him. Yeah. Leo hesitated, which up until now he hadn't been doing. Not like this. Then slowly. Do you ever feel like something doesn't feel fake? Even when it's supposed to be? That hit way harder than it should have. I swallowed, trying to keep my expression neutral. Depends, I said carefully. On what? On whether it actually is fake. There was a beat of silence. Leo's eyes stayed on mine. Steady. Searching. Right, he said quietly. But he didn't look convinced. I should have left. Seriously. That was the perfect moment to just say goodnight and walk away. End it clean. Simple. Instead, do you want to come up for a bit? I heard myself say. Idiot. Leo blinked, clearly not expecting that. Yeah, he said after a second. Yeah, okay. Of course he did. Back in my apartment, everything felt smaller. Not physically, just closer, more personal. The same space where this whole thing started, except now. Now it was different. Home sweet home, I said, tossing my keys on the counter. Leo stepped inside, looking around like he did the first time. But this time, his attention didn't stay on the room. It stayed on me. You were good tonight, he said. I leaned back against the counter. You said that already. I know, he replied. I mean it differently now. I frowned slightly. How? He stepped closer. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just deliberate. Back there, he said quietly. It stopped feeling like we were pretending. My heart picked up. Fast. That's kind of the point, I said, trying to keep things light. Leo shook his head slightly. No, he said. That's not what I mean. He was close now. Closer than he needed to be. Closer than fake boyfriend practice. Then what do you mean? I asked. Big mistake. Because now I'd asked. Leo didn't answer right away. Instead, his eyes dropped for a second, to my lips. And yeah, I noticed. Of course I noticed. Then his gaze came back up to mine. I mean, he said quietly, I don't think I was acting. That right there, that was the moment everything shifted. For real this time. No pretending. No script. No 3 months. Coffee shop. Keep it simple. Just him. Looking at me like that. And me, not stepping back. You don't have to say anything, he added quickly, like he suddenly realized what he just admitted. But I didn't move. Didn't look away. Didn't breathe for a second. Because the truth was, I felt it too. That whole night. Maybe even before that. And now that it was out there, I couldn't pretend I didn't. Leo, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Yeah, I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what this would change. Everything. This wasn't part of the plan. He let out a soft breath. I know. And after tonight, we were supposed to go back to normal. I know. Another step closer. Now there was barely any space left between us. And you still want that? He asked. That question. Simple. Direct. Impossible. Because the answer should have been yes. Obviously. This was supposed to be temporary. Convenient. Safe. But standing there with him this close, looking at me like that. Do you? I asked instead. Coward move. But I needed to hear it. Leo didn't hesitate this time. No. And yeah, that was it. That was all it took. Because the next thing I knew, I closed the distance. Not him, me. And the second our lips met, yeah, there was nothing fake about it. I didn't plan it. That's the first thing I remember thinking. The second was, there's no going back from this. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or uncertain or one of those, we both pull away immediately moments. It was steady, like we both already knew what this was. Leo's hand came up to my jaw, fingers brushing lightly along my skin like he was making sure I was real. And yeah, that didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. Because the second I felt that, I leaned in more. I don't know how long it lasted. Could have been a few seconds. Could have been longer. Time kind of stopped making sense. All I knew was that when we finally pulled back, we didn't move far. Still close. Still there. Still. Okay? I exhaled, letting out a quiet, slightly breathless laugh. That definitely wasn't part of the plan. Leo smiled, but it wasn't his usual confident one. This was softer. Real. Yeah, he said. I noticed. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just heavy. Like everything we'd been pretending suddenly needed a new definition. So what now? I asked. Simple question. Not simple answer. Leo's hand dropped slowly from my face, but he didn't step away. That depends, he said. On what? On whether you regret that. Direct. Of course he'd go there. I shook my head slightly. No. Honest. Too honest, maybe. His expression shifted relief, clear as day. Good, he said quietly. Another pause. Then, because I don't either. That shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. But it did. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to reset my brain. This is kind of a mess, I admitted. Leo huffed out a small laugh. Yeah, it is. We went from fake dating to, I gestured vaguely between us. Not fake, he finished. I looked at him. Not fake, I repeated. He nodded once. The thing is, now that it was said out loud, it made everything before it make more sense. The way he looked at me when he first showed up. The way he picked me. The way none of this ever felt like just a random favor. You planned this? I asked suddenly. Leo blinked. What? No. Not the wedding, I clarified. This. He stared at me for a second, then shook his head, a small smile forming. I wish I could say yes and sound smooth, he said. But no, I didn't plan this. Then why me? I asked again. Same question as before. Different weight now. Leo didn't look away this time. Because I noticed you, he said simply. That again. But you don't just ask someone you barely know to fake date you for a wedding, I pointed out. He hesitated. Then, unless you're looking for a reason to spend time with them. Leo, I said slowly. I know. He cut in, rubbing the back of his neck. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud. It doesn't sound stupid, I replied. It doesn't. No, I said. It sounds intentional. He let out a breath. Yeah, that's probably the better word. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other. And for the first time since this started, there was no script, no roles, no pretending, just two people who accidentally ended up somewhere real. So what do we do now? I asked again. Leo tilted his head slightly. Well, we could pretend that didn't happen. Yeah, that's not happening. Didn't think so. Or, I continued, we could not pretend. He smiled a little at that. I like that option. There was still that hesitation, though. Not doubt. Just awareness. Because this meant something. It wasn't just a random meeting or a one-time thing. Couldn't be. Not after everything that led up to it. You realize, I said, this changes the deal. Leo raised an eyebrow. What deal? You said after the wedding we go back to being strangers. He shook his head immediately. Yeah, he said. That part's not happening anymore. I laughed quietly. Good. Good? He echoed. Yeah, I said, stepping a little closer again. Because I didn't really want that anyway. His expression softened. Yeah, he said. Me neither. Another beat. Then he added, a little more serious this time. But we don't have to rush anything. That surprised me. In case you haven't noticed, I said. We already skipped a few steps. He smiled slightly. Yeah, but that doesn't mean we have to mess it up by going too fast. That actually made sense. Okay, I nodded. So what, we just see where this goes? Yeah, he said. If you want to. I held his gaze. I do. And just like that, it wasn't complicated anymore. Not really. Because whatever this started as, it wasn't that anymore. Leo glanced toward the door, then back at me. So, should I go? He asked. That question felt heavier than it should have. I shrugged slightly, trying to play it off. You can. He smirked a little. That sounds like a challenge. It's not. No, I shook my head. But you don't have to. He stepped closer again. Slow, careful, like he was giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. Good, he said quietly. And this time, when he kissed me again, there was no hesitation at all. And yet, that's when I realized something. The wedding, that was just an excuse. This was the part that actually mattered. I woke up before him, which was surprising because I barely slept. Not because anything crazy happened overnight, nothing rushed, nothing out of control. If anything, it was the opposite. Slow, careful, like we both understood this wasn't something to mess up. Still, my brain didn't exactly shut off. Leo was still asleep next to me. On his side, one arm loosely stretched across the bed, breathing steady, completely relaxed like he didn't have a single thought in his head. Must be nice. I lay there for a minute just looking at him. And yeah, that was new. Because this wasn't just a random encounter. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something I could just shrug off and forget about. This was creepy, Leo mumbled, eyes still closed. I blinked. What? You staring at me? He said, barely awake. Creepy, I scoffed. You're not even awake. Enough to know you're being weird. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't stop the small smile. Go back to sleep. Not happening, he muttered, finally opening his eyes. They landed on me immediately. Focused. Clear. Yeah. Definitely awake now. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just real. Morning, he said. Morning. Another pause. Then, so, he said slowly, still don't regret it? Straight to the point. Of course. I shook my head. No. Good. You? I asked. He didn't hesitate. No. And just like that, something in my chest settled. Leo shifted slightly, propping himself up on one arm. Can I ask you something? He said. You just did. He smirked faintly. You know what I mean. Yeah. I sighed. Go ahead. He watched me for a second, like he was choosing his words. Were you going to say yes if I asked you out? Without the wedding thing? That caught me off guard. I frowned slightly. You mean, like normally? Yeah. I thought about it. And honestly, I don't know, I admitted. Leo raised an eyebrow. That's not very reassuring. I'm being honest, I said. We didn't really know each other. Fair. But, I added. He waited. But I probably would have been curious. That got a small smile out of him. I'll take that. I sat up, running a hand through my hair. So what now? I asked. Deja vu, he muttered. Shut up, I said, throwing a pillow at him. He caught it easily, laughing under his breath. No, seriously, I continued. What is this? Leo leaned back slightly, thinking. Then, we figure it out. Wow, I deadpanned. Very helpful. I'm serious, he said. We don't need to label it right now. That made sense. But still, we're not strangers anymore, I pointed out. Definitely not. And we're not fake dating. Nope. And we're also not nothing. He looked at me, a little more serious now. No, he said. We're not nothing. There it was. That space in between. Not undefined, just not rushed. Okay. I nodded slowly. So we're seeing where this goes. Yeah, he said. If you're good with that. I am. Another pause. Then Leo smirked slightly. So, does that mean I can take you on an actual date this time? I rolled my eyes. You mean one that doesn't involve emotional damage and fake backstories? Exactly. Tempting, I said. He leaned in just a little. I can make it worth it. I huffed. You're very confident for someone who needed to hire a fake boyfriend. I didn't hire you. Felt like it. Please, he said. You said yes way too easily. Wow. I'm just saying. I shook my head, but I was smiling. Fine, I said. One real date. Just one? He asked. We'll see. Harsh. You'll survive. He watched me for a second, then nodded. All right, he said. One real date. Later, when he finally got up to leave, it felt different. Not like the first time he walked out of my apartment. Not like the "this was just a deal" version. This time, there was something to come back to. At the door, he paused. Hey, he said. Yeah, I meant what I said last night. Which part? I asked. He stepped a little closer. All of it. I held his gaze. Good, I said. He smiled, then leaned in. Quick this time. Just a short kiss. But yeah, still not fake. Text me, he said. Yeah, I nodded. I will. And then he left. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Everything felt quieter, but not empty, just different, because somehow, in the span of a few days, I went from struggling to pay rent and avoiding my landlord, to fake dating his son at a wedding, to actually wanting to see him again. Yeah. Didn't see that coming. But I also wasn't mad about it. Not even a little. And that was probably the craziest part of all. Our first real date almost didn't happen. Not because either of us backed out, but because suddenly, it felt like it mattered. He texted me later that same day. Not immediately. Not in a rushed, "So what are we doing now" kind of way. Just a simple, "Leo, you alive?" I stared at my phone for a solid minute before replying. Me barely. Still recovering from pretending to like weddings. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Leo, wow. And here I thought you enjoyed being my boyfriend. I smirked despite myself. Me fake boyfriend. Important distinction. There was a pause this time. Then, Leo, yeah, about that. That one message? Yeah, that did something to my chest. We didn't talk about it right away. Instead, he asked me out properly. No excuses. No pretending. Just, Leo, let me take you out tomorrow. For real this time. And yeah, I said yes. Again. The next evening felt completely different from the wedding. No suit. No pressure. No audience. Just us. He picked a small place. Nothing fancy. Not crowded. The kind of spot where you could actually hear each other talk without shouting over music or pretending to care about someone's speech. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I was nervous. Not fake boyfriend meeting the ex nervous. Different. Real. You look nervous, Leo said the second I sat down. I scoffed. I'm not nervous. You're tapping your fingers on the table. I stopped immediately. I do that. Sure. He smirked. I narrowed my eyes. Don't start. I'm not starting anything, he said, raising his hands slightly. Just observing. Yeah. Well, stop observing. He laughed quietly. And just like that, it got easier. The conversation flowed without effort. No script this time. No backstory to remember. Just actual questions. Actual answers. So what do you actually do when you're not pretending to be someone's boyfriend? He asked at one point. Survive, I said. Barely. He smiled. That bad. Rent's a nightmare, I admitted. Your dad's lucky I haven't run away yet. Leo leaned back slightly, watching me. Yeah, about that. I frowned. What? He hesitated. Then, you don't have to worry about rent this month. I blinked. What? I talked to him, he said. He owes me a few favors. Leo, relax. He cut in. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, I said. You can't just. I didn't do it because of the wedding, he said, more serious now. I paused. Then why? He held my gaze. Because I wanted to. That again. That same answer. Simple, direct, and way too effective. I exhaled slowly. You're making this complicated. I'm trying to make it easier. By doing things like that? By helping, he corrected. I looked at him for a second. Thank you, I said finally. He nodded once like that was enough. Later, as we walked outside, the air cool and quiet again, I realized something. This felt better than the wedding, better than the pretending, because this was just us. We stopped near the sidewalk, not quite ready to say goodbye. Again. See, Leo said. No emotional damage this time. Debatable, I replied. You still stress me out. Good. I frowned. Good. Means you care. I rolled my eyes. Don't push it. There was a pause. Then, so, he said, was it better than the fake date? I thought about it. Then I nodded. Yeah, I said. It was. He smiled. Good. Another pause. Then Leo stepped a little closer. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just familiar now. Can I ask you something? He said. You ask a lot of questions. Yeah, but this one matters. I raised an eyebrow. All right, go. He held my gaze. Do you still think this started as pretending? That question again. But this time, the answer felt obvious. No, I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Me neither. And just like that, everything clicked into place. Because the truth was, it never really was fake. Not completely. Not from the moment he knocked on my door. Not from the way he said my name like he already knew it. Not from the way none of this ever felt like just a favor. Good, I said quietly. Good, he echoed. He leaned in. And this time, when he kissed me, it wasn't a question. It wasn't a test. It wasn't part of some plan. It was just real. And yet, that fake wedding date turned into something I definitely wasn't expecting. But honestly, I wouldn't change a single part of it.